Hi, this is Emily Saliers from Indigo Girls, and you're listening to Rainbow Country.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, award-winning lesbian author Leah Lax joins me to talk about her latest book, Not From Here, the Song of America. That and more in episode 397, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hello, my name is Conchita.
And I'm Barbecue.
And my name is Hardcora. And we are the B Girls.
You're listening to
Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country, as I like to call it. A little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT-FM in Toronto, and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada and Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's Gay and Lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's #1 LGBT podcast on feedspot.com. So today, Not From Here, the Song of America, the latest book from award-winning lesbian author Leah Lax, a book that uncovers the long history of her Jewish family and more. Plus in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode I'm featuring some classic rock, some gay 80s, and more. All that lies ahead as we start Journey 397 through Rainbow Country. But first up, the latest evicted house guest from Big Brother Canada, Season 12.
House guests, I have the results. By a vote of 11 to none. Janine, you have been evicted from the Big Brother Canada house. Please get your things and say your goodbyes.
Janine, hi. How are you?
Hi. I'm good. How are you?
I am well. I have to say that vote, unanimous, 11-0.
Yeah.
Did that vote surprise you?
Not at all. The only person that said that they might throw me a sympathy vote was Vivek, but I didn't push for it. It wasn't important for me. At that point, I knew I was going out the doors, so I didn't want him to ruin his game by throwing me a sympathy vote. So it wasn't a shocker.
Let's talk some gameplay.
Absolutely.
Anthony, a returning house guest, he was the very first head of household. He put you up for eviction. Here we are today. Why do you think Anthony saw you as such a threat to his game? Why you?
I think because I was the oldest female. He thought that, again, I spearheaded this all-woman alliance. He knew I was a super fan. I think he was probably scared that I knew the game so well and that I would target him eventually down the line. But truth be told, Anthony was never my target. Eventually I'd probably get him out because he is a huge threat and he's played this game before, but he was very far away from my pecking list. If anything, I'd like to carry him even further than if some girls got off, but I don't know. He just thought she's the one to go for, and he pinned me in a corner because there was no getting out of that. As soon as he said, "You're my target," no one would even look at me or want to talk game with me. It was like, okay, my game's done. This is very unfortunate. And it was all over lies too. So all I could do was defend myself, which is exhausting when that's all you have to give to people. It wasn't me. I didn't say those things. It was hard.
So was there a female alliance in the house?
There was. We did it right from the jump. It was like day 2. We were all getting ready for our winter's fashion show. And I do think that this is the first time I've seen such a powerful group of women who are so intelligent. And I thought maybe we can make history. Maybe we can actually do an all-female alliance that works. I didn't see much in terms of showmances happening, just the way the men were versus the women. So I was like, maybe this is the time. Maybe this is the time we can do a all-female alliance. And I think I was just probably the most vocal about it, but everyone else seemed on board with it. But I knew shortly after that it was fizzling because just the excitement wasn't there anymore.
Did you spearhead the female alliance?
Did I? Did I spearhead the female alliance? I honestly think I did. But then Avery kept saying that she thinks she did. So then I start second guessing myself. But I do know I was probably the most vocal about it. I was just very passionate about it. There's only been 3 female winners in 10 full seasons of Big Brother Canada. So I just want a female to take this one for a win. And so I was very vocal definitely about that, how I want a woman to win. Spearhead. I wish I could remember. Honestly, I feel like I need to go back and watch it. It definitely was the most vocal.
Do you think there was anything you could have done more to try to stay in the game, to maybe stir things up, especially when Victoria Spicy V mentioned about, spilling the beans about the female alliance to Anthony? Mm-hmm. Was there anything more you could have done, do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know I'm going to watch myself back and I'm going to be screaming at myself and disappointed that I didn't fight, but it's so different when you're actually in the house. Again, I can only equate it to, I felt like I was a cancer in the house. Nobody wanted, as soon as Anthony said I was the target, no one would want to talk to me. They would exit conversation. I'd be wanting to talk to someone and they'd leave the room on me. Or their eyes were really shady and they wouldn't even look me in the eyes. I just felt like there was nothing I could say or do. I would have loved to have worked with Dennis. Dennis knows the game as much as I do. He and I have, we're older, we're more mature. We have that emotional intelligence that I think maybe some of the younger players don't have. And I know we could have done amazing things in the game, but he wouldn't give me anything. Even when he had the power of veto, I knew he wasn't going to use it on me. And I would go blue in the face trying to convince him to do it. It's so hard when you're actually in that house. And I do admit that I did go into a little bit of self-preservation mode because it was psychological warfare of what I was dealing with and feeling so outed in the house.
Let's go back in time. You find out you will be on Big Brother Canada 12.
Yes.
Did you have a strategy going into the game?
I did have a strategy going into the game. I actually wanted to win the very first HOH. So having that whole, returnees, entourage thing. It really threw a wrench into my whole plans. I wanted to win that first HOH. I wanted to sit down with each and every house guest, and then I could handpick who I would want to work with, and then move forward throughout the game and have like a really solid alliance. But I never got that opportunity. As soon as there was teams and, you know, you had those returning amazing house guests, my strategy went right out the window.
I believe you played in all the competitions that there were up until you left. How were those competitions for you?
They were incredible. That was my one takeaway, is as short as my time was in the Big Brother Canada house, I played in 4 competitions and I kind of kicked butt. Very close. I was the second last female standing in Pitfall, the very first one. The HOH competition, I wanted to be splattered with paint. I kept trying to send Spicy B like my psychic messages, like, don't be scared to spray the mom in the house. I want to be sprayed with paint. I want my kids to see me splattered. And then the HOH the have and have not competitions, so much fun. I love digging through the sludge, the butter, and the cherry sauce, and then putting my face into those disgusting pies. And my team in particular, we were the elders. We were the older people in the house, and we beat all the other teams. So that felt amazing. And then the one with the down the rabbit hole with the puzzle in the dark, that one was so much fun. I love escape rooms, and that was very escape room-esque. I've done escape rooms where I'm completely in the dark, so I felt comfortable. I knew exactly what my strategy would be for that game, and I was so close. I know I was so close. I haven't watched it yet. And I think towards the end, once Dennis started checking, I panicked a little, and then I just started switching tiles that I thought were incorrect. I think if I took a little bit more time and actually felt the puzzle and calmed myself down, I could have taken the win. But again, panic kicked in, and I messed that one up.
Last question. Best part about being part of Big Brother Canada season 12?
Just the opportunity to live out a dream. It's something I've always wanted to do. And there wasn't a day that I was in that house that I was like, pinch me, I'm here, I made it. This is so surreal. The house itself, it was so beautifully decorated. And everywhere you went was a reminder of all these amazing other all-stars that have played the game. On the floor was every single winner in their own, like, it was like their own Hollywood Walk of Fame. So I would just see these amazing people that I've watched for years and years and years. And then in the pool room was all the trophies of all these former players that have had amazing accomplishments, like 7 HOH wins or being evicted from the house 3 times. And it was just, I just loved every minute of it. And I'm so grateful. And check off my, bucket list.
Janine, well said, well done, well played. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Big Brother Canada Season 12 airs on Global TV Sundays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. For more information, simply visit bigbrothercanada.ca. When I return, Not From Here, the Song of America.
Hi, everybody. This is Gino Vanelli. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
What losses marked us? What did we lose by leaving? A patch of land, a house, a shared language, neighbors and friends who used the same gestures and figures of speech that together formed a web of belonging. connections through which they could share with one another and ward off danger. Towns for my family, Skodas, Lithuania, Krakow, Poland, Grodno, Belarus, in which 50% of them or more were Jewish, who were Jews who married one another for so many generations that I was probably related to nearly all of the Jews in each of those places. Almost 100,000 murdered between those towns. Gravestones and crowded cemeteries dating back centuries with our names chiseled on them in Yiddish. Mallet, Merkus, Renner, Sadransky, Greenberg, Simon, others of our family left behind and forgotten. The names of siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, friends, lovers who were alive when my family departed. Their stories, their stories, their stories. As a lesbian, I realized that the Hasidim had deemed my innate inclination to love irrelevant, twisted, and dangerous. I had lived as an alien among them in that strict religious community beneath an onslaught of daily commands to squelch my sex and sexuality, my source of an ability to create, have passion, and drive. It was like a forced entry and attack on my being. Now, listening, I imagined I had endured only a small private war, but it was a war on my soul. Then I fled toward the hope of freedom.
Leah Lax, hi, how are you?
Fine. Pleased to be here.
I have to say, thank you so much for being here to have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So thank you for that, especially to talk about Not From Here, the Song of America. This is your most recent project, your most recent book. I like to start with the basics. Not From Here, the Song of America. Let's get to the heart of what this book is about, essentially. And what would you say at the heart of this, within the pages of Not From Here? What's at the heart of this journey, this story?
I love being asked this by queer radio. I just love it. And it kind of throws a rainbow on the approach on how I answer your question, doesn't it? Because I'm all about integrating my various hats, my various selves. I'm all about how we're all three-dimensional people. I'm a writer, but I am who I am. So I have my point of view as a queer person, as a Jewish person, as a woman, at whatever I approach. My book, Not From Here, the Song of America, was me, not someone else, listening to hundreds of immigrants and refugees in a city that is the most culturally diverse in North America, Houston, Texas, that has been a center point for resettlement by refugee organizations for decades. I know that surprises people because it's at the heart of Texas, but it's a fact. And it was me, queer person, listening to all the queer person and grandchild of refugees, listening to these stories of people from all over the world. They sometimes could talk, I'm not kidding, 3-4 hours. We'd meet over several days. And I dug deep. I usually started with, by saying, please begin with, I was born. And what happened was that I heard everything through my lens, right? And I heard enormous commonality with my Jewish background, enormous commonality among them, regardless of what part of the world they were from, and unfortunate but very clear commonality with myself as a gay person. Why do I say unfortunate? Because these are people looking for home. These are people who want to feel that who have turned their lives upside down to come here in many cases, even people who came here for economic opportunity or because of a job. Nobody leaves everything they know, their home, their language, their family, their friends, their network that is built up over a lifetime or maybe several generations, and go to another part of the world and start all over again without loss and without a weird feeling of alienation that can take a really long time. to overcome, if ever. So, you know, why do I say I feel that commonality as a gay person? Because we want to feel at home. Home means that you own the very dirt beneath your feet. Home means that you have an intrinsic, obvious, automatic right to be who you are and live in this place as, you know, as anybody else would. And unfortunately, in many ways, we're still struggling. So I felt that overlap as well. I wanted to put, you know, when I went to put these stories together into a book, I knew I couldn't I tried it. I wanted to keep myself out of it. I tried to just put together a compendium. But there needed to be it wasn't true to the experience. And my heart and mind were so overwhelmed with all I learned, all I heard, in the course of listening. It was such a revelation about who my country is today, who we are. You know, we are formed by the people around us. I began to think of the people I interviewed not as immigrants, not as refugees, not as segregated groups from different parts of the world, but as new Americans, period. This is the cutting edge of who we have become, in every country that has always accepted a steady influx of immigrants is going through that same process of constant change. I think we need to look at our newest members as the most current portrait of our national identity.
So let's go back. I believe 2007, you co-wrote your first opera, The Refuge, for the Houston Grand Opera. Doing your research to create that opera, to write the words for it, you were doing this research. You were interviewing these individuals back in, 2006, 2007, that sort of time frame. And this today is now not from here. So how did you find those individuals that you interviewed back in the mid 2000s? How did you source those stories out? How did you find those individuals that are now, the spine for Not From Here? How did you originally find those individuals?
2006 was when I was doing all this interviewing. I spent a year of my life going all over the city and listening to people. Just a quick backstory. I spent 30 years of my life in a deeply fundamentalist, closed community. I was Jewish Hasidic, ultra Orthodox, like the people you see you've seen now on several series on Netflix. That was me. And obviously a very closeted person. When I finally left, got out, I went and got my drive to become an artist, or my need, I should say, was a big part of that. I went and got a degree in creative writing and started writing. It was within 2 years of that. Oh, and by the way, my first book was a memoir about that, the only gay memoir ever to come out of the Hasidic world, and it's called Uncovered. And that's gone all over the world. When I was only 2 years out of that community when Houston Grand Opera asked me to weirdly create a brand new work for their main stage, like a $1 million production, which would probably be $2 million today. Because I didn't have a background in opera, but what I had gotten a reputation for was the way I've developed interview techniques as an art form, and lift key lines and poetic that are incredibly powerful and poetic. Think about Anna Devere Smith. She was one of my sort of heroes. To quote people verbatim, because you can't make it up, because people are beautiful, because the most poetic, powerful, unbelievable, unexpected things can come out of them that are the most telling about not just the individuals, but of our society. So that's what I did. I said, when they asked me, well, my first reaction was, no, I don't know how to write an opera. And my second reaction was, but I know what I know how to do. I'll start with that. And if I get to a point where this isn't going to work, I'll hand it back unfinished. And they accepted the commission on that basis. I do have a musical background. I had this instinct that this could work out. There I was, new in a city where I lived for a long time, but I lived in a closeted and walled off from secular society. I didn't know the city. So I set about exploring. I just walked. I mean, Houston is over 1,000, it covers over 1,000 square miles. There are large areas of immigrant population that have a higher immigrant population density. And I wandered. I met people on the street. I mean, in stores. And then I kept lists. I networked from there. People would tell me their stories. And,
so you were hustling.
I was hustling and networking and creating a network from nothing. They'd say, "Oh, my story, that was boring." When I was sitting there like I couldn't breathe, they'd say, but you have to hear my friend's story. I play soccer with him. It was like that. I amassed lists and lists and lists of names and phone numbers. I did a lot of like thumbnails over the phone, and then gradually would zero in on certain people that I wanted those long, deep interviews of. I met people for those, I always took recording equipment. I met and got appropriate release forms. I met people where they interviewed me. I interviewed them in their car or in a diners or at, in the back room at their place of work or in shared apartments with other people or anything up to opulent private homes. All manner. Okay, so your question was how is this relevant today?
Well, no, you answered the question, which was how did you source these people out? How did you find them? But I'm going to jump to my next question, which is just the idea today to go back in your archives from 2006 to use those interviews to create this new work, Not From Here. Where did that idea come from?
Look, to write an opera, and this was a main stage big production, so it was 90 minutes. Still, when you write from music, the music has the, forefront, and the singers need lots of room to hang on notes and to sing open vowels and stuff. In other words, the entire libretto that I wrote for them, although it quoted many people, was under 3,000 words. A book is closer to, today, 80 to 90,000 words. I knew what I was doing from the beginning was overkill for the opera. I knew by saying, start with I was born, I was asking for infinitely more material I needed, but I couldn't help myself. I wanted everything. I wanted to hear everything. I knew these stories were precious and necessary and that I would save them. And ultimately, I knew even then that one day this was going to be a book.
So in the back of your mind, when you were originally doing those interviews back in 2006, in the back of your mind, did you have the genesis, the idea, the kernel for doing totally. A book down the road?
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. I didn't know, but I had to process it was so formative, so powerful, so informative. I had to process how to approach it and what I was getting out of it, what I learned, what I would say about the whole thing. And it only took time for me to look up and go, no, this informed my whole view of myself and of my country, and actually helped me chart a path forward into my country, because here are these intrepid people doing exactly that. So I saved them, and a lot of people I kept in contact with. A big spark to push me forward was the 2016 U.S. election of Donald Trump, and the way they were turning immigration into sort of a theater. Let me say this: every single country that is operating on economically on a national scale, which means just about all of us, uses immigration as an economic tool. When our population growth is flat, as it is in most of our countries today, when we have an aging population, that means a huge damper on the economy, period. And the way politicians have always operated is to bring people in, new labor, to boost that up. That open door or semi-open door policy in the U.S. is a huge key to why the U.S. has been so economically dominant always. Every politician knows that. Any politician screaming, shut the doors or lock them up, is wanting power and votes. It's not to our, in the aggregate, it's not to our benefit at all. I look back over and to see how many people have been coming over the Texas border and forever, and found that no matter what administration, there were always about 1 million being let in and about 1 million who were coming in without papers. But walls, vigilante patrols, changes in policy, changes in administration has never really changed those numbers. And some of that, I have to conclude, was intentional.
I have a quote for you. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, quote. Leah Lax understands that everyone has a story and a secret. To experience this ourselves, we have only to read her utterly irresistible Not From Here. Unquote. That's from Gloria Steinem. So here's the question. When you first saw that quote, read that quote for your book, what went through your mind?
That here's a person who really went to the heart of my book. The main thing that stunned me in listening to all these immigrants, and that harkened back to my own family, because I grew up around my immigrant grandparents, is that everybody had hidden their stories. And when everybody, and that very often sitting down with me was the only time they had ever gone back to the beginning and really told everything that they were and became and went through and lost. It was the men who tended to cry. I saw a lot of tears. And when Jewish families came to this country and the great wave or to this continent, I should say, the great wave of Jewish immigration to North America that stemmed about from 1880 through 1920 and then picked up again with people either escaping the Germans in the 30s or early 30s or survivors in the, after World War II was over. Every single one of them we would term refugees. I think it's forgotten that Jewish persecution is centuries and many centuries old in Europe, and my family who came here in the 19-teens and 20s, they were very much refugees. They were being persecuted. These families were being persecuted, particularly in Eastern Europe, where they were herded into ghettos, or in Russia into a very forlorn, empty area of the country called the Pale of Settlement, and refused entry to professional guilds, universities, everything. They were poor, they were starving. I think they forget that. I'm sorry, I went on that too long, but what I'm trying to say is that people come to start over and they want their kids to feel like they're true Americans or true Canadians, like they belong here. And these are people who suffered, but who also don't get the new culture or often even the new language. So the number one goal is, if they have kids, is I want you to feel safe and I want you to feel like this is home, even if I don't. So they hide their stories. I honestly wonder if there will be a generation of kids raised by gay people whose parents really never said a lot about what they went through because it was tough. I don't think it's over. I live in the South, and I know dozens and dozens of gay people in Houston who came, this is a common phenomenon, they came to the big city because of homophobia in small towns that tend to be more conservative and often not as well educated. And so they gloss it over. They don't really tell their story. Or if they're who they might have been alienated from, who might have turned away because they're gay. They want their kids to feel like everyone else. So they seek a place where they're accepted and where the kids can thrive, they hope. And then the focus is relentlessly on the future. Well, this happened in my family. Now, Jewish families got fragmented. They were desperate to get out. They were dying. They were getting, there was no, for centuries, there was no prosecution of crimes against Jews. So what would happen is the families got fragmented. They take tickets to anywhere. I did not know what siblings my grandparents had. I did not know my grandmother's family names, their last names. I didn't know anything, and I didn't know this until I was listening to people literally from all over the world have the same reaction. And this sent me back to my own family. You find that in the book, this tiny thread going through of me going, and going and searching my own family. Found family graves literally scattered along a route across the world. I mean, Norway, Scotland, Nova Scotia. I grew up in the South in the United States with no clue of all the people that were very closely related who died or who scattered and we lost contact with. We're splintered. So I related to on so many levels to everything I heard.
And through their story, you got to know your own story. So talk to me about this. The title.
Through their divulging of secrets, I got to know my own story.
Your own secrets. Talk to me about the title, Not From Here, the Song of America. Is there a story behind coming up with and settling on this particular title, Not From Here, the Song of America?
I am by nature a deeply musical person. When people speak, I hear their song, and that sounds kind of trite metaphorical, but I mean that the ups and downs of your individual voice sounds like a song to me. Different accents sound like songs. I listen at that level. My book is very wound up with the creating of music. It opens, the first line says this book, just illogically, the first line is this book begins with an opera. There are scenes of performing deeply moving pieces with their own words in it for communities that had where the original speakers lived, stuff like that. I found all along the way, over and over and over again, people telling me, particularly when they talked about their journey to this continent, saying that they encountered people who said, "You're not from here. You are not from here." While I was writing the opera, Newsweek magazine, which was big back then, had a cover of a picture of Uncle Sam pointing, out at the reader, and it said, "You're not from here." I was running into that line everywhere, and but I was getting it secondhand. People were telling me about the doors that got closed using that line, and it became a theme in the opera. In every movement, somebody tells one of the subjects, "You are not from here." It becomes a musical theme through the whole piece. And I turned it on its head. What I heard "not from here" as an accusation, I turned it into a badge of belonging, because ultimately the U.S. Virtually every single person in this country, their family came from somewhere else. They migrated by choice, or they were forced to migrate, or they were put in shackles and brought here. But everyone's from somewhere else. And by going back and discovering and understanding our roots and our families and our stories, we relate to each other by stepping outside of identity politics, which is good for us in terms of sensitivity. But we can't be put in a box. We can't take identity politics so far that we only relate to those who are exactly like us, and we label other people. Because when we look at in the aggregate and say, well, no, what is our whole population, like regardless of ethnicity, regardless of color, at some level, we're all not from here. That defines our whole country. It's the majority. When we divide into little ethnic groups, we look at each individual group as a minority, including gay people, and say, oh, we have to fight for our rights because we're not in the majority. No one's going to pay attention to us. So we have to make people be nice. What if we look at the overlap of our common experiences and join forces because of our commonality? I mean, oh boy, do I sound like I'm preaching, but the experience of sitting and listening to people from all over the world. And the commonality I found was just with me, little gay Jewish girl, and second generation American, was beyond astounding, to the point where I began to understand what defines really our whole country. So not from here is really the theme of the whole thing in a positive way, an essential way. It is the song of America. That's how I feel.
And on that note, Rainbow Country will return right after this.
Hi, I'm songwriter and producer Jim Valance, and you are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Hitmakers is a full-service, award-winning record label and social enterprise based in Iqaluit, Nunavut. We specialize in the creating and marketing of world-class Inuit and Indigenous music, including pop, hip-hop, rock, folk, and traditional Inuit music. Hitmakers has studios in Iqaluit, Ottawa, and Toronto. The label currently works with more than 20 Inuit and Indigenous artists, and we represent and promote many more. The company was founded in 2016, and our mission is to create viable careers in the arts for Inuit and Indigenous artists through music, media, and education. Our secondary mission is to empower artists to share and strengthen their stories and culture. To learn more, please connect with us on social media or at hitmakers.com. That's hitmakers with a Z. Thanks for listening. Koyanami.
Hi, this is Amanda Marshall, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
So, Leah Lax, let's get to know you a little bit better, okay? So, So we're just going to jump right into this here. You grew up in a conservative family, in a Jewish home. I believe at the age of 15, you leave to join a Hasidic group, community. At the age of 19, you're married. You end up having, I believe, 7 kids over the course of a number of years, I believe 10 years. And during that period of time when you were, I think, married, you were having thoughts of having sex. You were having dreams of having sex with women. So here's another question that I have for you. Did you always have same-sex thoughts when you were younger, like when you were, like 8, 9, 10, that sort of thing? Did you have, like a crush on a girlfriend of yours when you were growing up or anything of the sort? Because when you finally get married at 19, you're having, dreams of having sex with other women. So that couldn't just come out of the blue like that. Growing up, did you have thoughts of, did you have little crushes or anything of the sort when you were younger?
I want to back up just a tiny bit and say that I wasn't from a conservative home. I was from a very liberal home. My mother was an artist, and so she had gay friends. It was a norm, and my move into Hasidic world was kind of adolescent rebellion. It drove her crazy. She hated it. The world I was in was still a time when the media hadn't picked up gay themes at all. I mean, we cannot underestimate how the whole movement which was originally called, the original gay liberation movement, how it has changed the vocabulary of 2 generations now and given people, young people, the language to know themselves. If you don't have language, you can't really know yourself. If you're a kid, what feels completely natural, normal, you don't stand back and say, there must be a name for this. You say, this is just me. Of course, I had crushes. I mean, looking back, I was such a baby dyke from day one, but oh my God, you should read my diaries, that started from age like 12. Yeah. But the other piece is, if there isn't a language, and now all your peers at school are like the girls were turning into people I didn't know, batting their eyelids at the boys and fluttering in the bathrooms and putting on eyeliner in the mirror. And I'm going, guys, what I used to know you. What happened to you? I always, and top that with living in a fairly, and any environment that was racist was also anti-Semitic. That's been erased from our history. Every neighborhood across the United States that said no black people can live here, in the same breath, in the same sentence, it said no blacks or Jews, period. And that's all been erased because we happen to be accidentally white. We don't share anything genetically with, the typical white person in America, but it gave us an entry point at least. I'm kind of white if you like me and not if you don't, but we were able to fight to get an entry point. In the city I lived in, I always felt different. As a Jewish person, different from the other girls around me, I just never felt I quite belonged. And when I went to my grandmother and said, well, who are we? I was trying to find out who I am. And they wouldn't tell their stories. When I found the Hasidim, it was a double whammy. It was a safe place to hide because I was falling in love with girls. And it seemed a little dangerous. It was a place where I didn't really, at a time in my life where I didn't know how to be the kind of woman that people expected me to be. Here was this religious group who said, here's some rules, here's a list. And this is how you act, this is how you dress, this is how you walk, this is how you speak, this is what you do as a woman. And then you'll just be automatically fully accepted among us. You'll never feel like an outsider. To a 16-year-old, and then they promised me God and eternal love. You'll never be alone. So it was safe, it was enticing, it was a place to hide. It was all that. Okay, there's that. And the marriage that you mentioned, that was an arranged marriage. So I didn't have to deal with the courtship thing either. The 7 kids are because the Hasidic world forbids birth control. Why that's routinely left out of their depictions, I don't know. But that's why the families are so huge.
When did you come out then? Because that was a really pivotal point for you in your life's journey.
Yeah, well, the pivotal point was that I had an abortion. Mm-hmm. And I have to say this in public because I actually got a rabbi to give me permission to do it, and he told me never to tell anybody. So I always say it in public wherever I can. I got pregnant with what would have been my 8th child, and it triggered almost a breakdown. I thought it was going to kill me physically because I couldn't take it anymore, and it would crush my soul. I became very, insanely driven to rid myself of this baby. So before it destroyed me, I was so already steamrolled by that life that I did it for the sake of my children. I wanted them to be able to have a mother. So it wasn't for me, it should have been for both, and that's kind of sad. But I pulled it off, and it was downhill from there. I couldn't lie to myself anymore after that. Once I owned my body, then I owned who I was. Then I could say, well, if this is my body, this is insomnia that I've had for years, is because of dreams, and those dreams are the real me. And I am going to be who I am because that's the only way to live. And I let myself fall in love. I had an affair while I was a Hasidic woman, a very torrid love affair that didn't last very long, but she was the most wonderful transitional object. And I found myself out of that community. I found my way out. Never looked back.
Wow. How did your kids react to mom coming out?
Oh, well, the adolescents were mad because they're adolescents. This is a lot of years later, and they figured out that I'm not going away, and that I can love them more when I can love freely the woman who is so essential in my life, and therefore love myself. So, how did they react? I would say that's been a long journey itself, but I think we're doing pretty. This is all preparation in a way too for me going out and listening to other people and writing the opera and leading up to this story here. It's all a journey of becoming, right? But our identities shift over time. How we identify, what we identify, not the hardwired stuff, like for me being a lesbian, but how we see ourselves. I call it dancing on the hyphen. In my case, it's like Jewish American, gay, or Jewish and gay. I think most of us have what I would call multiple hyphens. And over time, we teeter one way or teeter the other. We try to find a reconciliation between our various identities. We try to find a relationship and between them, and we try to find relationships that honor all those aspects of who we are. We do that by in turn honoring the same in others. I found this again with everybody I spoke to. Their sadness about kind of losing parts of themselves as they immerse in a new society, their sense of being not a singular thing, but a hyphenated identity for the first time, and their efforts to balance and honor all parts of themselves, and their feeling of gain and loss at the same time. And I also related to that in many ways. I gained an awareness and an ability to embrace myself as a gay person. I lost my community. I lost part of my relationship with my children. I could never share that, that membership in that world with them, those that remained. Again, every time we move forward, we lose something. It all came to a reality for me. All the stories you're asking me was all a lead up to Not From Here. It kind of clarifies where I was and what I ultimately wrote about in my book as I listened to these absolutely astounding stories of people that were so accidentally brave because where they found themselves, so driven to still make a life and find a place that feels like home. We as gay people were accidentally brave, right? We didn't ask to be born gay. We didn't ask to be born in a world that changes its mind with every generation about what rights we have to breathe.
And what rights you want to repeal. Here's my last question for you. Not From Here, the Song of America. This is going to be published in, I believe, 33 countries. At the beginning of this interview, I asked you essentially what's at the heart of this book. But now I'm going to ask you, is there a message, is there a takeaway that you hope your readers come away with after they've read the words and the pages of Not From Here? Is there a takeaway that you hope your audiences come away with?
God, yes. Because I think the most essential thing, we live half our lives online at this point. So we're surrounded by just storms of words, a cacophony of opinions and thoughts and ideas all the time. We're always struggling to navigate it. If there's any takeaway, I would want my listeners, or hopefully who become my readers, to take away from reading Not From Here, the Song of America, is that ideally, I imagine you walking away quieted, determined to take the focus on how to stop thinking about what to say to counter what you hear or to respond to, and understand that first you have to listen. have to be willing to open your heart and sit down and let out a breath and say, well, begin with, I was born. And listen for everything you have in common with what you hear. And then I think you'll know what to say only for the very next step. And when you listen again, maybe you'll know the step after that. That's what this work did to me. I hope that's what I wanted to share in this book.
Leah Lax, well said. Well done, well written. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Not From Here, the Song of America will be available starting March 28th, wherever you get your favorite books. For more on this award-winning author, simply visit leahLaxAuthor.com. And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, simply head over to marktara.com where everything is connected and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out my socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, we are living in days of making dreams come true, so believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you.
Hi, I'm Keegan Hurst, former professional rugby player, coach, raving homosexual, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.